From the very beginning, the world feels far too big for a newborn, even when that newborn is a behemoth, an S-rank monster whose existence alone can shake seasoned adventurers. Deep inside an ancient forest, wrapped in towering roots and air thick with magic, a tiny creature opens its eyes for the first time. He doesn't understand what he is yet, only that something warm and gentle is approaching. That presence is Arya, a young adventurer with a kind heart, who finds this trembling little beast and instantly feels something shift, as if fate itself had placed him in her hands. She kneels beside him, offering comfort instead of fear, and the behemoth reacts not with instinct or violence, but with a soft, innocent curiosity. He senses her warmth, her voice, the way she shields him from the cold breeze slipping through the trees. Arya decides to take him with her, giving him the name Tamers, a small, friendly sound for a creature destined to be feared. And from that moment on, the bond between them begins to grow quietly, naturally, like a spark waiting to become something far greater. Life with Arya becomes a gentle rhythm. She feeds him, plays with him, teaches him, treating him less like a beast and more like a child discovering the world. Tamers, despite being born as a mythical monster, enjoys simple things: warm hands, soft grass, the way Arya smiles when he tries to walk on his round little paws. There's something magical about their connection, something that makes him cling to her warmth, as if she were his entire world. But even peace has limits in a place where danger isn't a question of if, but when. During one of their travels, Arya and Tamers encounter a powerful foe, an ogre whose heavy steps shake the ground. Arya steps forward to protect him, even though she knows she's completely outmatched. Tamers feels something pull at him then, a strange instinct awakening deep inside his small body, an instinct tied to the true nature of a behemoth. And just as the air tightens, the ogre raises its weapon, and Arya braces herself. Something inside Tamers finally bursts awake, raw, unstoppable, and nothing like the harmless creature he seemed to be only moments ago. After that first spark of power awakened inside the tiny behemoth, life around him began to change in ways he couldn't quite understand. Arya still held him close, still treated him with the same gentle affection, but now there was a new layer to the world, one filled with curious glances, whispered questions, and the soft hum of magic surrounding his growing body. Even though he looked small and harmless, the truth under his fur was starting to make itself known. And Arya, with her warm smile, guided him through it as if every new discovery were simply another step in a long, shared journey. Their days became a quiet pattern of learning and exploring. Tamers, still clumsy and round like a playful kitten, could now sense things in the air, faint trails of mana, distant footsteps, even the emotions drifting off the people around him. Arya treated his abilities like a game, encouraging him to try again whenever he succeeded in sensing something new. He didn't fully grasp what his powers meant, only that her laughter made the world feel brighter, and that every moment beside her felt safe, familiar, almost like home. Eventually Arya brought him to the guild, a bustling place filled with loud voices, weapons clattering, and adventurers sizing each other up with quick, sharp stares. For Tamers, everything was overwhelming: the noise, the smell of steel, the flicker of torches, but Arya's hand on his head was enough to anchor him. She introduced him to her companions, a trio of seasoned adventurers who looked at the tiny behemoth with a mix of confusion and disbelief. To them, his presence felt impossible, a creature feared across the land, reduced to a small, soft bundle nuzzling against Arya's cloak. Still, they agreed to help. They tested him gently at first, small tasks, harmless exercises, until his instincts began to emerge stronger than before. Tamers could imitate techniques, understand commands without hearing words, and even unleash bursts of power far beyond his adorable appearance. Each moment surprised the group, but Arya simply watched with that quiet pride, as if she had known all along that the little creature in her arms was destined for something extraordinary. Just as everyone was adjusting to this strange new routine, the guild received troubling news. A dangerous monster had appeared near the outskirts, stronger than anything expected in that region. Adventurers murmured uneasily, weapons tightened in their grip, and the air filled with a tension Tamers could feel deep in his chest. Arya exchanged a glance with her party, a silent understanding passing between them. And while they prepared to head out, Tamers watched her closely, sensing that whatever awaited them outside the guild walls was about to pull him into a world far bigger and far more dangerous than the warm, simple days he had known until now. For Tamers, the days beside Arya had always felt gentle and bright, but the moment they stepped beyond the guild's safety, the world showed a rougher edge. The forest ahead was dense, humming with hidden creatures, and every shift in the wind carried a story only a behemoth could truly understand. Even in his small, kitten-like body, Tamers sensed the disturbance that had alarmed the guild. Something powerful was moving through the woods, unsettling the animals and stirring the mana around them like ripples in deep water. Arya walked at his side with calm determination, her presence steady and warm, guiding him through shadows that might have frightened him if he were alone. Her party remained alert as they advanced. Branches cracked under their boots and sunlight filtered through the leaves in pale, trembling beams. Tamers watched everything with wide curiosity, birds scattering from branches, faint scents drifting through the air, the rhythm of Arya's breathing as she prepared herself for whatever lay ahead. Even though he didn't fully grasp danger the way humans did, he could feel unease tightening around the group, pulling their steps closer together. They soon found the source of the disturbance, a violent boar-like monster, far larger than anything that should inhabit that part of the forest. Its hide was thick, scarred, and steaming with raw magic. Before anyone could react, it charged with brutal force, tearing through trees as if they were nothing more than grass. Arya leapt forward, shielding Tamers with her body, while her companions moved in to hold the beast back. The clash was immediate, metal striking against hardened hide, fire spells bursting in brief flashes, the monster bucking wildly as it fought with relentless fury. Tamers felt something ignite inside him, an instinct he couldn't ignore. He remembered the ogre, the spark of overwhelming power that had erupted from him without warning. Now, that same force stirred again, but this time it wasn't sudden or wild. It was steady, called forth by his need to protect the warmth he had come to cherish. Without thinking, he sprang forward, small paws hitting the ground with surprising weight. A shockwave rippled out from him, invisible but undeniable, stunning the monster long enough for Arya's party to regain their footing. Everyone stared, even mid-battle, unable to reconcile the tiny creature before them with the power he had just released. But Tamers didn't look at them. His gaze was fixed on Arya, making sure she was safe, making sure she was still standing. She met his eyes with a soft, grateful smile, and that alone was enough to push him forward again. As the forest settled into a tense silence, something new stirred beyond the trees, a presence darker and far more intelligent than the beast they had just faced, watching them with a cold interest that Tamers felt deep in his bones. After the violent clash in the forest, the air around Tamers felt strangely heavy, as if the world itself were adjusting to the strength he had revealed. Arya carried him in her arms while the group returned to town, her warmth steady against his small body. Even though he looked like nothing more than a round, fluffy creature, every adventurer who passed by could sense something different now, an unusual pressure, a faint echo of the power that had shaken the trees moments earlier. Tamers didn't fully understand the weight of those stares, but he knew Arya's arms felt like the safest place in the world. Back in town, life around the guild was lively and loud, filled with adventurers trading stories and weapons glinting under the lamps. But the moment Arya walked inside with Tamers, curiosity spread through the hall like a wave. People whispered, some with awe, others with disbelief. A creature like this shouldn't be tamed, shouldn't be docile, shouldn't fit so gently into the crook of a girl's arm. And yet, there he was quiet, blinking, almost shy as he nuzzled closer to Arya's chest. The guild master watched him carefully, sensing the truth beneath all that fluff, a hidden potential far beyond anything they could measure. Arya's team decided to celebrate their victory with a small feast. They gathered in a cozy room at the guild, ordering warm soup, roasted meat, and bread fresh from the oven. Tamers sat on Arya's lap, enjoying the comforting smell of food and the soft laughter filling the space. He loved moments like these, where danger felt far away, and the world slowed down just enough for him to feel like a part of something larger. Arya stroked his fur absently, as if she could soothe the lingering tension from the battle with a single gentle touch. Later that night, curiosity led Arya to test the limits of Tamer's abilities in a safe room behind the guild. Magic stones lit the space with a soft glow, casting long shadows across the floor. She set him down and spoke to him with a warm, encouraging tone, asking him to try channeling his energy again. Tamer's focused, ears twitching, paws tensing. And then, just like before, a surge of raw power pulsed from within him, but this time it didn't explode outward. It flowed gently, controlled, forming a faint, shimmering aura around his body. Arya's eyes widened. Her companions exchanged stunned looks. The tiny behemoth wasn't just strong, he was learning to control what made him dangerous. But before they could continue, the door creaked open, and a stern-faced guild official stepped inside with urgent news. A new request had arrived, one that mentioned strange footprints outside the northern forest. Footprints unlike any creature recorded in their bestiary. And as the official laid the report on the table, Tamers felt that same deep, unsettling presence from the forest stirring again, closer this time, and watching. In the quiet hours of the morning, when the sunlight was still soft and the town had yet to fully awaken, Tamers opened his eyes to the gentle sound of Arya's voice. She was getting ready for the new request the guild had delivered the night before, her movements calm but touched with a hint of unease. Even though she tried to hide it, Tamers could feel the tension settled around her like a thin veil, an instinctive warning that whatever awaited them in the northern forest was far from ordinary. He stretched his small body, blinking up at her with warm eyes, and Arya smiled, brushing a hand over his head as if that simple touch could steady her thoughts. As they left the guild, the streets shimmered with early light, and the breeze carried the scent of pine drifting from the outskirts. Arya's companions joined them, exchanging brief nods and adjusting their gear, each one aware that the strange footprints reported were unlike anything they had faced before. Tamers padded alongside Arya, trying to mimic her steady steps, though his tiny paws left soft, harmless impressions on the dirt path. Yet beneath that adorable surface, power pulsed quietly, waiting, listening. The forest grew darker as they advanced, branches hanging lower, shadows stretching long across the ground. Tamers felt the mana shift, twisting through the air in slow, heavy currents. He stayed close to Arya, ears flicking at every rustle, every distant snap of a twig. Their search led them to a clearing where the sunlight broke through in scattered patches, illuminating the earth below, and there, pressed deep into the soil, were the footprints they had been warned about. Massive prints. Clawed. Too wide and too heavy for any creature documented by the guild. Arya knelt beside them, her fingers brushing the edges of the indentations. The ground still trembled faintly, as if the beast that made them had passed through only moments earlier. Her team formed a defensive circle, scanning the trees with sharp gazes. Tamers sniffed the air, his fur prickling. Whatever had been here carried a scent he recognized from the battle in the forest, a dark presence, heavy with malice, one that made his instincts surge restlessly inside him. Before they could investigate further, the ground quivered again, this time stronger. Birds burst from the treetops, screeching as they scattered into the sky. A low growl rumbled from somewhere beyond the clearing, vibrating through the trunks and roots. Arya rose slowly, placing a protective hand in front of Tamers, her posture steady, but her heartbeat quickening. Her companions tightened their grips on their weapons, forming a barrier around them. Tamers, small as he was, felt a pull inside him, a silent call from the darkness ahead, urging him to step forward. His eyes fixed on the shadows as they shifted, gathering, forming something that watched them with chilling intelligence. And in that still moment, as the forest held its breath, the creature that had left those enormous footprints finally began to emerge from the trees. Tamers had always sensed the world in a way no ordinary creature could, but as the massive figure emerged from the shadows of the northern forest, that instinct sharpened into something almost electric. The monster stepped into the clearing with a weight that made the ground shudder, towering, broad-shouldered, its hide dark like obsidian and marked with glowing streaks of mana. Arya instinctively pulled Tamers close, her arm tightening protectively even as her eyes widened in quiet determination. Her party shifted into formation, each one bracing themselves, though the sheer size of the beast left no doubt that this encounter would be far more dangerous than the rampaging boar or the creatures they had faced before. The monster's gaze swept across the group, slow and calculating, lingering on Arya before locking onto Tamers with an unsettling intensity. It wasn't just looking at him, it was recognizing him. Something deep within its stare stirred a memory, a primal understanding of what the tiny behemoth truly was beneath all that soft fur. Tamers felt a faint tremor run through his body, not of fear, but of something older waking up inside him, a connection to the wild, ancient power that shaped beasts of legend. The creature roared, the sound echoing through the trees like rolling thunder, and the attack followed immediately. Arya's companions rushed forward, their blades flashing, spells bursting in bright streaks of flame and wind. The forest lit up with magic, each strike clashing against the monster's thick hide with only enough force to slow it down. Arya set Tamers down gently, whispering a soft reassurance before joining the fight with agile, precise movements. Her courage pulsed like a warm light, guiding her even as the ground cracked beneath the monster's heavy steps. Tamers watched, his heart tightening as Arya dodged a sweeping strike that would have shattered stone. He didn't want to feel helpless, not now, not when the people he cared for were fighting with everything they had. That same instinct he'd felt before stirred again. His small body tensed, mana swirling around him like a rising tide. But this time, something inside him shifted, as if the forest itself leaned closer, recognizing the awakening of a creature meant to stand among legends. A pulse of power escaped him, soft at first, then stronger, wrapping around his body in a shimmering glow. Arya noticed it mid-battle, her eyes flicking toward him for the briefest moment, filled with trust and something like pride. The monster noticed too, and its attention snapped fully onto him, as if drawn by a force deeper than instinct. It stepped past the adventurers, ignoring their attacks, focusing entirely on Tamers. The earth shook with every stride, leaves trembling as if bowing to the presence of two apex beings about to cross paths. And as Tamers faced the towering creature, light gathering around his tiny paws, the forest fell into a tense, breathless silence, just before the first true clash of their rising powers began. In the heart of the forest, with sunlight barely pushing through the trembling canopy, Tamers stood before the towering monster that had emerged from the shadows. Despite his small, round body, there was something unmistakably ancient in the way the mana gathered around him, soft at first, like a warm breeze, then rising slowly as if remembering the power buried deep within his lineage. Arya watched from behind, breath steady but eyes filled with worry and trust, her hand gripping her weapon as her party formed a protective half-circle, ready to intervene if even a second went wrong. The creature advanced with heavy steps, each one sinking into the earth and sending tremors through the roots. It wasn't a mindless beast. Its gaze held intention, a strange recognition that seemed to reach past Tamers' tiny form and into the true nature hidden beneath. Tamers met that gaze, not with fear, but with a quiet determination shaped by every moment he had spent at Arya's side, every warm smile, every gentle pat on the head, every lesson learned from watching her courage. The first attack came fast. The monster lunged with a force that split the ground, and Arya's party moved instantly, spells bursting in flashes of light, blades clashing against its hide. Fire spiraled from one adventurer's staff, wind magic twisted around another sword, and the forest lit up with a chaotic dance of magic and steel. But the creature barely paused, swatting away their efforts and pushing through them with single-minded focus toward Tamers. Something in that moment pulled at Tamers from deep inside, an instinct he couldn't fully understand but couldn't ignore either. His little paws pressed into the ground, mana swirling around him like a rising tide, gathering strength and warmth until it pulsed through the clearing. The air thickened, the leaves trembled, and even the monster hesitated as the aura around Tamers brightened, revealing the faint outline of something far larger, a silhouette reminiscent of the true behemoth he was destined to become. Arya whispered his name softly, not in fear but as encouragement, her voice a warm thread that grounded him. Hearing her, Tamers channeled that growing energy forward, releasing a sudden burst of power that cracked through the clearing like a shockwave. It wasn't wild or uncontrollable this time. It flowed cleanly, purposefully, knocking the monster back and sending dust spiraling through the air. Arya's party seized the opening, rushing in with renewed strength while Tamers steadied himself, panting slightly from the effort. But as the dust cleared, something unexpected happened. The monster rose again, wounded, but no longer looking at Tamers with hostility. Its posture shifted, muscles loosening, eyes lowering as if acknowledging him, as if bowing. The forest grew silent, every sound fading as the massive creature slowly stepped back, turning its gaze toward the deeper woods before vanishing into the trees with heavy, echoing strides. Arya approached Tamers gently, kneeling beside him while her companions exchanged confused, uneasy stares. No ordinary monster would retreat like that, not after being provoked, not after showing such overwhelming strength. And as Arya lifted Tamers into her arms, holding him close with a soft sigh of relief, the distant rumble of something far older stirred beneath the forest floor. A reminder that the creature they'd just faced might have only been the first sign of what awaited beyond the northern woods. After the mysterious beast retreated into the depths of the forest, the world around Tamers seemed to shift in a way he couldn't fully understand. Arya carried him gently as they made their way back toward town, her warmth steady against the cool afternoon air. Even without saying a word, Tamers could feel the lingering weight in her heartbeat, the quiet worry that something bigger was unfolding beyond what they could see. Her party walked in silence too, each lost in their thoughts, replaying the moment when the monster bowed to Tamers as if acknowledging a king in disguise. Back at the guild, the atmosphere was thick with speculation. News of the encounter spread quickly, turning curious whispers into uneasy murmurs. Adventurers gathered in small circles, trying to piece together what kind of creature would recognize a tiny behemoth and why it would choose to retreat instead of fight. Tamers stayed close to Arya, curled in her arms as she reported the mission details to the guild master. The man listened carefully, his expression shifting from concern to something more thoughtful, as if he were trying to connect this event to rumors far older than the town itself. Later, in one of the guild's quiet resting rooms, Arya laid Tamers on a soft blanket, letting him relax while she and her companions discussed their next move. Lantern light flickered warmly across the wooden walls, casting gentle shadows that danced with every soft breeze. Tamers listened quietly, his little ears twitching as he felt their emotions more clearly than their words: confusion, concern, gratitude, and above all, a growing awareness that he wasn't simply a pet or a harmless creature. Something inside him mattered. Something the world was beginning to notice. Wanting to ease the tension, Arya decided to take Tamers outside for some fresh air. The evening sky was painted with fading streaks of orange and purple, and the first stars blinked softly overhead. She set him on the grass, smiling as he took a few playful steps, his round body wobbling with each bounce. These small, peaceful moments always felt like a treasure to him, moments where he wasn't a mysterious being or a creature of legend, but simply Arya's little companion, safe and loved. But even in that calm, Tamers felt something strange stirring deeper within him. A faint pull, like a distant voice calling his name through layers of memory he didn't yet possess. He paused, ears lifting, eyes narrowing toward the far edge of the town where the forest cast long, dark silhouettes against the horizon. Arya noticed his sudden stillness and knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his back. That was when a messenger burst through the guild doors behind them, panting, carrying a sealed report marked with urgent crimson ink. The guild bells began to ring, sharp and clear, echoing through the streets. Arya turned toward the sound, her face tightening, not with fear, but with the familiar resolve of someone ready to face whatever was coming. And in Tamer's chest, that distant pull grew stronger, as if warning him that whatever awaited beyond the town's borders was tied to the same presence that had bowed before him in the forest. As the guild bells echoed through the town, the quiet evening Tamers had been enjoying disappeared beneath a wave of tension that spread from street to street. Arya held him close, feeling the small rise and fall of his breathing against her chest as she hurried back inside the guild hall. The atmosphere had changed completely. Voices no longer held curiosity but urgency, and adventurers gathered around the central board with sharp eyes and tightened grips on their weapons. Something had stirred again near the northern forest, something that made even seasoned fighters stand straighter. The messenger handed Arya a sealed report, and she opened it with a steady but worried expression. Tamers felt her pulse shift as she read, a blend of concern and determination wrapping around her like a cloak. The report described strange movements near the mountain pass, shadows traveling in clusters, trees split from the base, mana surges rising and falling like an unsteady heartbeat. And buried between the lines was a detail that made Tamer's ears twitch, sightings of a creature with the same glowing patterns as the monster that had bowed to him. Arya's party gathered quickly, their faces hardened by the weight of something they couldn't yet name. They prepared their gear in silence, each motion deliberate, the calm before a storm none of them fully understood. Tamers watched them closely, his round little body perched on the table as he sensed the same faint call that had tugged at him the night before. It felt closer now, clearer, as if it were reaching through the trees, urging him toward something waiting in the dark. Before they departed, Arya knelt beside him, pressing her forehead gently against his. It was a small gesture, soft and warm, but it carried a promise that no matter what they faced, she believed in him. That tiny moment filled Tamers with a warmth that spread through his mana like sunlight on water, steadying him in a way words never could. Their journey toward the mountain pass felt different from their usual missions. The forest was quieter, almost unnaturally so, as if every creature had retreated into hiding. Fallen branches littered the path, and the air pulsed with a tension that made even the wind feel heavy. Tamers walked beside Arya, his senses sharpened, ears flicking toward every distant rumble and tremor beneath the soil. The deeper they moved, the more that invisible thread pulling at him grew stronger, guiding him toward something inevitable. When they reached a narrow valley path, the ground showed unmistakable signs of a struggle, giant claw marks carved deep into the stone, and scorch marks that hummed with leftover mana. Arya and her companions examined the scene carefully, each new detail adding to the unease curling in their stomachs. Tamers stepped closer, feeling the echo of a presence he recognized, faint but unmistakable. Then, from the far end of the valley, a distant roar broke the silence. It wasn't wild or aggressive, it was calling. Arya turned toward the sound, her grip tightening around her weapon as the shadows at the edge of the path began to shift, stretching, rising, forming the silhouette of something massive moving toward them with purpose, drawn to Tamers, and to the power awakening inside him. From the moment that distant roar echoed through the narrow valley, something inside Tamers shifted, as if the world had paused just long enough for him to feel the weight of what was coming. Arya stepped protectively in front of him, her posture steady, her eyes fixed on the shadows stretching across the rocky path. Her party tightened their formation around her, but even their seasoned instincts couldn't hide the flicker of concern that passed between them. They all sensed it. Whatever was approaching wasn't an ordinary creature, nor a simple threat. It felt deliberate, like a presence seeking something. Seeking him. The figure emerged slowly, its massive shape outlined against the dim light filtering through the canyon walls. This new beast carried itself with a strange dignity, muscles like carved stone, fur dark as twilight, and eyes glowing with a deep, ancient intelligence. It wasn't the same creature from the forest, but it shared that same eerie recognition, its gaze locking onto Tamer's as if he were a missing piece of something long forgotten. Tamer's fur prickled. Not in fear, but in response to a connection he didn't yet understand, something instinctive and old. Aria's companions launched the first defensive strikes, their attacks lighting up the valley in flashes of color, fire crackling along the rocks, wind slicing through the dust, earth magic rumbling beneath their feet. But the beast barely reacted, brushing off their efforts as though swatting aside leaves. It wasn't hostile, but it was resolute, pushing forward step by step, ignoring everything except the small behemoth at Aria's side. Tamer stepped forward almost without realizing it, drawn by that strange pull that had been growing inside him since the first encounter. His paws trembled slightly as mana pooled around him, swirling in soft waves like ripples forming on still water. Arya called his name gently, her voice filled with both worry and trust, and that warmth steadied him enough to face the creature directly. The beast lowered its head, studying him with an emotion too complex to be aggression. It felt like recognition, like greeting. The air around them thickened with pressure, yet there was a quiet, almost reverent undertone to the moment. Then, with a sudden shift, the creature let out a deep rumbling call, a resonant sound that echoed through the canyon and vibrated through Tamer's chest. It wasn't a challenge. It was an invitation. The response awakened inside Tamer's almost instantly. A surge of mana rose from within him, brighter and more controlled than before, wrapping around his body in a glowing veil. For a heartbeat, the faint silhouette of a colossal behemoth flickered behind his small form, massive, regal, undeniable. The creature before him froze, its eyes widening, and for the first time, Arya and her team truly understood. These beasts weren't chasing Tamers out of hostility. They were seeking him out because of what he was. The energy around Tamers intensified, humming in the air like a heartbeat growing louder. Pebbles trembled beneath his paws. The wind seemed to bend toward him. Arya instinctively stepped closer, not to stop him, but to be there, beside him, whatever happened next. And just as the creature began to bow its head, the earth shook with a violent crack from somewhere deeper within the mountains, sending a shockwave through the valley, a warning that the world around them was shifting once again. And something even larger was beginning to awaken. After the earth-shaking crack echoed through the mountains, a heavy stillness fell over the valley, as if the entire landscape were holding its breath. Tamers felt the vibration travel through his paws, a deep, rumbling signal that something far larger had stirred beneath the rocky ground. Arya instinctively drew closer to him, her presence warm and steady despite the tension tightening around her. Her party exchanged quick, uneasy glances, seasoned adventurers who understood the difference between a creature's roar and the awakening of something ancient. The beast that had bowed to Tamer shifted its stance, ears twitching as it looked toward the fissure spreading across the canyon wall. It seemed conflicted, torn between honoring the small behemoth standing before it and responding to the powerful call resonating from deep underground. Tamer sensed its hesitation, a silent exchange passing between them that didn't require words. Whatever lay beneath the earth, it frightened even this massive, intelligent creature. Arya urged everyone to move back as loose stones tumbled down the cliffside. The air thickened with mana, swirling like a rising storm. Tamer's fur bristled, his instincts sharpened with a clarity he didn't fully understand but couldn't ignore. Arya knelt beside him, whispering something soft, a reassurance meant to anchor him even as the world around them trembled in warning. The fissure widened suddenly, releasing a surge of hot air that swept through the valley. A low, guttural rumble followed, echoing through the mountains with the unmistakable weight of a creature far older and far more dangerous than anything they had faced before. Arya's companions raised their weapons, preparing for a monster they couldn't yet see, their silhouettes tense against the shifting light. The beast that had recognized Tamers took several steps back, lowering its head with a mixture of fear and submission. It wasn't retreating from them, but from what was emerging. The ground split open in a violent crack, sending shards of stone spraying across the valley floor. From the smoke and dust, A massive shadow rose, a colossal shape outlined against the flickering glow of mana pulsing like molten veins beneath its skin. Tamers felt a jolt of recognition run through him. Not familiarity, but kinship. A distant echo, a whisper from his lineage, calling him toward the creature that now towered over the valley. Arya sensed the shift in him and placed a steadying hand on his back, her voice trembling slightly as she murmured his name. Even she could tell, this was not just another enemy. This was something tied directly to what Tamers truly was. The colossal creature let out a deafening roar, shaking dust from the cliffs and sending waves of pressure rolling outward. Arya's party was forced to brace themselves, boots digging into the ground. Yet Tamers remained firmly standing, eyes locked onto the monster with a calm far beyond his small form. Mana gathered around him, rising gently, as if responding to the immense presence now looming before them. And in that breathless moment, between the roar fading and the next tremor beginning, Tamers took a single step forward, guided not by fear, but by the instinctive pull of destiny drawing him closer to the creature that had awakened beneath the mountain. From the moment Tamers stepped forward toward the colossal creature emerging from the mountain, something shifted in the air around them. The valley, which had moments earlier felt tight with fear and tension, now pulsed with a strange, heavy calm, like the world was waiting for an ancient story to finish telling itself. Arya watched him with wide, uncertain eyes, her hand hovering near her chest as if holding on to the hope that he would somehow return safely to her side. Her party stood behind her, weapons lowered but not forgotten, their instincts torn between protecting Tamers and respecting the unseen bond unfolding before them. The massive beast, its body carved with glowing lines of mana and its presence radiating an overwhelming strength, leaned downward, bringing its gaze level with the small, round behemoth now facing it. Its breath rumbled softly, not as a threat but almost like recognition, the kind one might give to a long-lost successor. Tamers didn't shy away. Instead, he lifted his head, his fur shimmering faintly as mana gathered around him like a warm tide responding to an ancient call. For the first time, Arya truly saw the outlines of the creature he was destined to become, flickering behind him like a memory of the future. The valley trembled again, not from aggression, but from the resonance of their energies meeting. The giant creature lowered itself further and bowed. A gesture so filled with meaning that even the wind stilled for a moment. Arya's breath caught in her throat. Her companions froze. It was as if the creature weren't submitting in defeat, but acknowledging Tamer's place in a lineage far older than any of them had imagined. As the beast rose, a soft glow drifted from its mane, floating like tiny sparks of stardust. Those lights circled Tamers gently, and he closed his eyes as the magic brushed against him, warm, ancient, and strangely comforting. It was a blessing, a passing of strength, a quiet reminder that the world saw him not as a stray creature, but as a rightful heir to something vast and powerful. With its duty fulfilled, the giant creature stepped back, turning toward the deep path from which it had emerged. It paused only once, glancing at Tamers with a final, knowing look before disappearing into the shadows of the mountain, its enormous silhouette fading like a distant echo returning to sleep. Silence followed. Not heavy, not frightening, just still, almost peaceful. Tamers turned toward Arya then, his little paws patting softly across the cracked earth. She knelt immediately, pulling him into her arms with shaking relief, burying her face in his fur as if grounding herself in the warmth she had feared losing. Her companions approached slowly, the tension melting from their faces as they watched the tiny creature curl into her embrace, smaller than ever, but shining with a quiet strength they would never again underestimate. And as Arya held him close, the last traces of the creature's glow settling around them like fading embers, Tamers blinked up at the sky, feeling, for the first time, that he understood something about himself. Not through words or memories, but through the gentle hum of mana that still lingered in his chest. Far away, deep in the mountain's dark corridors, a faint rumble stirred again, not a warning, but a reminder that the world of beasts and legends was still alive, still watching, and still waiting for the small behemoth who would one day rise to meet it.